were like much bigger. The food were more like, towards the English side, especially when you have breakfast. I mean, in Lagos, you probably find that.
At what point did you leave Nigeria? Why did you leave Nigeria? And how did that happen?
Okay, so when I joined marketing, I was in a program that allowed you to rotate to another region after a number of months and experience a different market or like a different area of marketing.
Yeah.
And that was actually so I honestly did not initially have the intention to move out of the country. But
Okay.
when I joined the program, I started looking at, okay, this is an opportunity to first expand my career, expand my, knowledge base, get
Right.
to understand other markets. And once it was time for rotation, I got into this role as an associate strategist, growth strategist.
Okay.
And um, my team was based out of London. So it just made sense that I sit with them, and Google transferred me to London. So that's the short answer to how I moved.
Interesting. So you had actually moved to London before you switched to the global talent visa. We're gonna
That's
get to
right. That's right.
So you moved from Nigeria to London. What year was that?
In 2021, I moved in 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
Then you've been in London working for Google. So how has the experience been? What has been the major differences for you?
To be honest, Google has a very strong culture of communality. Like there's that very. The better way to explain this is that Google is almost the same in every region in terms of company culture,
Yeah.
but it's also different in terms of the culture of the place where
Mm,
the company is situated. So
mm,
in Nigeria, for instance, um, we were like we weren't as big as, of course, as in London, but it was a very connected group. Everyone knew what everybody was doing. We're quite intentional about that connecting, and we worked together. It was like you were always maybe trying to take it 20% with somebody else's team. It was actually very fun, and bring the Ninja spirit into that. Just it
exactly.
was it was amazing. When I also moved here, it wasn't different. And by here I mean London. it
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't different because the company culture remained the same, but then there's also the English aspect of that, right? The offices were like much bigger. The food were more like, towards the English side, especially when you have breakfast. I mean, in Lagos, you probably find like pounded yam and
Tell you Yamala.
yeah. Um, but I can't exactly compare them apples to apples because the role I was doing in Nigeria is also different from the role that I took up here in London, and the markets I was looking after were different as well. Because now I was looking at more wider market. I was on the regional role. Um, in Lagos, I was supporting sub-Saharan Africa, but then when I got to London, I was looking after Central and Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, um, as well as sub-Saharan Africa. So these were like three different regions, and still being on a regional role. So experiences different, like very unique, very empowering, different, but also quite wholesome in terms of what they were for me and how it's also helped me improve and increase my knowledge base.
Of course, you moved from Nigeria to London based on Google sponsorship, if I'm correct. And then eventually you switched to the global talent visa. So what made you make this switch?
Honest answer: layoffs. Um, yeah, that's the honest answer.
Hmm.
But a broader answer was before and before all of this happened, I have very amazing friends, by the way.
Yeah.
People who we share like mutual interests, who also look out for me a lot. And I have a couple of friends that have, through the global visa route, moved to London and or moved to the UK. And a lot of times I've been like, Oiza, apply for this thing. I'm like, yeah, I will. I was quite lazy about the process. So they were always saying apply for this thing, and I'll be like, yeah, 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 I think I would, because there was flexibility, more flexibility with the visa, right? And I was like, at the time, I was like, I don't know if I really needed it, you know. But
Really?
then when the challenge, the economic challenge came in, and the tech space was like heavily impacted, it became a even better reason to
Yeah.
apply for the talent visas. And my friend didn't stop ringing in my head like, hey, girl, you need to apply for this. I mean, just, and it wasn't like, oh, I wanted to leave the company. It was more that it just gives you the flexibility and
Yeah.
also opportunity to do more. But also from a life admin perspective, like when you're on a skilled worker visa, if you change roles, you have to like inform the home office about it and all of that. You just didn't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
That was why I applied. So I'd always wanted to apply, but the layoff sort of pushed me to get on it quickly and apply.
Can you share your experience in terms of how you got started in terms of applying for the Global Talent Visa and what really worked for you in ensuring that you were able to get endorsed successfully, more or less from start to finish?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what really worked for me to get endorsed, it's totally on the people who endorsed me. But I think it was making sure that I did my part. Again, like I had friends who had done this before, so I had like guidance, a lot of guidance. Uh, in the application didn't take much time. It was in the preparation for the application, and I've done quite a number of things in my short career, and which I didn't realize myself until I started applying for the talent visa. So maybe the way I would speak to somebody who is trying to apply, it's more that just keep doing what you're doing and keep making impact and start to look at the whole process. So, for instance, or maybe I go back to how I applied. Even
Exactly.
with my friend's encouragement, it was going to the official website and looking at the criteria for which I needed to make. I looked through them and looked through my career to determine which of these criteria can I meet. And of course, outside of the mandatory criteria, there were like the optional criteria as well. Uh, so I looked at, I think they call it OC2, OC3, all those
Optional
things.
criteria, mandatory
Yeah,
criteria. Yeah.
exactly. Which one out of those three do I really fit into? And then begin to channel my preparation towards each of those. So I I feel like technician, which was the endorsing body, has all the resources in terms of all the information you need, but then the preparation, putting all of those information together to make sure that you convince someone enough that you are indeed a talent was quite important. And I had my friends to really support me, as little as having double spacing in my in my letters. So you can imagine how meticulous my friends are.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay, so what would you say was the most challenging parts of your application for the Global Talent Visa, and how did you navigate it? Because,
it's right. I think it
so
is.
you
Yeah,
have you have submit 15 different documents, really, 10 evidences, 10 pieces of evidence, your personal statements, your CV, recommendation letters, so exactly which would you say was the most challenging and how did you do it?
it was writing about the things that I'd done. Before I applied for it, I'd never really taken stock of what I'd achieved in my career.
Yeah.
And I've never really sat down to write that much like I did. Now that I think back at it, I think I need to start writing. But it was the writing, right? Looking back at what have I done? What fits into this? At some point, I had to like stop looking at the criteria and the things I need to fit to just think about myself.
Yeah.
What were the things that I had done? And what helped me was that I started first with my CV.
Awesome.
So start first with my CV, writing about everything. So from when I graduated from the university, my first job, what were the things I achieved in my first job, to my second job. And then I started realizing, oh, wow, this is a story. I start to remember when I was trying to achieve this, there was like all of the stories here. Oh, I trained over 2,000 people in digital skills. I'm like, okay. And
Something
so
here.
all of that created the room for me to start writing and bringing that 10, evidences together. But the challenge was in the writing.
So for you, were there any specific resources or say pieces of advice that you found particularly helpful during your visa application process?
I think a friend of mine, and so I keep referring to my friends because honestly, they were the ones that really pushed me to to pick this up fast. But one of the things they made me do was create like a project plan for my application. I know that it might sound weird,
It doesn't
but
sound weird nowadays, actually, because I help a lot of people to apply. I actually have a bespoke application strategy, that would really, really help for real. Yeah, so I can relate. But please go ahead.
yeah, it was creating a project plan from
Yeah,
the people I wanted to recommend me to the different stories I wanted to tell, to the time that I wanted to get this information back,
yeah,
to the resources I needed, to the emails I needed to draft to my mentors and sponsors and say, I need your recommendation, to all the um, all the evidence I wanted to pull together. So it was having like just that structured template where I was keeping track of what I needed to do, what I haven't done, and all of the resources I'm trying to put together. Because it gave me a bird's eye view of my whole application to be able to say, this part fits into this other part, and this part would work better in this criteria. So I was putting that together and putting the criteria straight from technician side by side. Because I also realized, based on what my friends told me, is that some of the criteria that was on technician wasn't there at the time they applied. So this was constantly changing. So
exactly.
I needed to put this application together by myself, based off what was on the site and not necessarily what other people had done. So having a project plan and just one place to see everything really helped, because then it helped me really connect my story from from the very first writing on my CV to the last word on my personal statement. It was all a story from the evidence. It all came together. At the end of the day, when you were reading it or when you were trying to like look at the evidence, you could connect it. Oh, she said something, and in this personal statement, I see it in her CV. This was the year. Okay, the year she wrote on her personal statement. So connect the evidences she put, the timing on like the Twitter screenshots, and all of those things work. Oh, that's how I imagine that the person who endorsed me thought about it. But yeah,
Interesting. So, how long did it take you to put together the entire application for your
I was
endorsement?
quite lazy. I would say about a month.
Interesting.
Actually, 3 weeks to a month. I was lazy about it. Yeah.
So between submission and when you got your endorsement, how long did that take?
I got an endorsement in 10 days.
Really?
Yeah, 10 days. So I think yeah, I got an endorsement in 10 days. I counted it.
What would you say for you think really stood out, in terms of writing your personal statement for the technician endorsement?
I think there was a confidence in myself, or my friends say the confidence in myself. First off, and I'm saying what my friends had said to me, like, I had a lot of good stuff that I'd done, but I needed to put them together in a way that wasn't too much, too little, but just right. I needed to be able to sell myself,
Mhm.
sell why I should be in the UK,
Yeah,
sell what I can do,
yeah,
and show them how what I've done can influence what I can do. It took a lot of edit review from my friends as well. Uh, from oh, your closing statement isn't strong enough, to, oh no, like your achievements feel this personal statement too much, to, you know, you need to like connect what you are going to do into like the situation of the UK, in terms of what are the gaps that needs to be filled, or how does your talent fill those gaps. I had got all this like very amazing feedback from my friends, and so a couple of edits. It took it took a whole lot of edits to create that personal story, for which every line connected to every evidence, every recommendation letter
Yeah.
came back to my personal statement, from talking about how, top people were, recognizing me, to talking about how I had achieved, things that maybe at the time people of my in my position couldn't, to how I intend to bring these things that I've done in Africa, of which, because most of my experiences, most of the things I've done was in Africa, but how I could bring this into the UK ecosystem. And also, I'd also been in the UK for a year at the time, is what I had even done in the UK already,
Yeah.
and how that could expand over time if they give me a leave to remain. I was quite confident that I was doing them.
So now that you've been endorsed personally, what was the feeling like? If you remember the
It
day
was, it was really good. It was really good. I mean, at the time that it came was like I said, it was a challenging time. So it felt really good, exhilarating to have that, because then I wasn't worried about going back home when I lose my job,
yeah.
or if I lose my job, change of word, if I lose my job. It
Mhm.
was it was a, what do I have to offer other businesses in the country
Yeah.
if I had to, like, quit my job.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty of it, because I like to do things on my own terms when I want to. So whenever someone else has that control, it makes me, yeah,
Yeah.
it makes me quite uncomfortable, and then I tend to panic. But having that visa really helped. But more so, it started to give me that opportunity to really think about other things I wanted to do in the community. To not just think about, you know, focusing on my employer alone, but also what can I do in the ecosystem? How do I want to get involved? So right now, I'm a startup mentor, um, because I wanted to like do these things. I also wanted to do it, right? But as a skilled worker, you also have restrictions to
Yeah. You
some
do.
of things you could do. Because
Yeah.
the flexibility it brought also gave me the opportunity to start thinking outside of my employer. Like, of course, while also delivering excellently with my employer, it's like, what are the other things I could do? But it also makes it easier for my employer as well, because now I can sort of dabble into other stuff, even in the company.
Yeah.
Like, if I decide to change roles, for instance, without necessarily having to give them the trouble of, working out with the home office to,
Yeah.
give all those updates. So it's really nice. It was a nice feeling.
What are the opportunities you think the global talents visa has really opened up to you? And then what are the future prospects you see yourself pursuing, based off being a global talent in the UK?
Yeah, so I'm actually quite passionate about helping businesses, individuals, um, startups, drive growth, right? It's something that I'm quite passionate about. And I thought that was one flexibility that the visa brought, because um, for sure, with a skilled visa, I could do a lot of this within the company, but it meant that now I could expand
Yeah.
out into the community, out into the ecosystem, and really support startups and businesses without necessarily building any conflict of interest with my company, but also not being in that situation where the restrictions that come with my skilled worker visa hinders me from doing that. But now that I think about that, I don't really know to a large extent the restrictions of the skilled worker visa, because I was too careful to not even go outside of that restriction. So it didn't give me the opportunity to really think about it.
Possible.
But yes, it's more that flexibility, of course, to launch more into like startups, individuals. So like I do some consultations with individuals, more speaking engagements, more startup mentorship, growth discussions and all of that has come from the flexibility of the global talent visa, and I think that's really a good thing because not only my employer gets to
It's
you know experience what I can offer, but also the environment that I live in, uh,
awesome.
and
Awesome.
it's also something that I'm passionate about. So I don't have to worry about breaking rules.
So going back to Nigeria,
Yeah,
anyway, so it's more or less like it's a limitless future. It's a world of unlimited opportunities, really, in terms of what you can do with Google, what you can do outside of Google, what you can do for yourself in the future, and all of that. Yeah. So once again, congratulations.